This week we're going to be looking at HDDs and SSDs, the basics of how they work, the pros and cons, and of course some helpful consumer advice. So let's start with HDDs, or hard disk drives, sometimes referred to as just mechanical drives. These are nowadays best used as second drives, mainly for large file mass storage, so for things like films, videos, music, photos and games, etc. How they work is that they have a spinning platter that has a thin layer of magnetic material on it, and an actuator arm with a magnetic head. As the platter spins, the head manipulates the magnetic surface to represent binary code, ones and zeros, that can then be translated into your data when read back. Due to this way of working with a motor for the platter and one for the actuator arm, HDDs are vulnerable to mechanical failure and especially shock damage if dropped or knocked about. As an HDD fills up with data, it writes everything one after another. However, if you delete a file, it leaves a gap which will eventually be filled up. But if the file filling it is bigger than the one deleted, it will be partially stored in that location on the platter and then split up into another part. This leads to slower load times, etc., and is why defragging is super important for HDDs, as doing so rejoins all the files that have been split apart, improving load times. A problem many people face is deleting files from an HDD, especially in the event of selling on a computer/laptop with an HDD in it. The issue here is that when you delete a file, all it's really doing is removing the reference points for it and telling the system it's okay to use the space that file was in. However, until the space that file was in is overwritten, it will still be there, and relatively easy to recover with simple software. The only way to guarantee your files are deleted is to completely fill the drive up with nothing files. Of course, there is software available that can do this for you, such as CCleaner and many more. Another common question to be asked is, why does my 1TB drive only have 931GB of space? The reason behind this is that HDD manufacturers measure in base 10, whereas Windows measures in base 2. So an HDD manufacturer would measure a 1TB hard drive as 1 billion bytes, which should really be 1,073,741,824 bytes for 1 terabyte. So what you actually get is 1 billion divided by 1024 3 times, which equals 931GB due to it working in base 2. Apologies if that's difficult to follow, but I hope you got it. So let's take a look at some more things about HDDs. They commonly come in two different sizes, 2.5 inch mainly for laptops or small form factor systems, and 3.5 inch for desktop computers. Platter spin speeds vary from 5400 RPM, which is mostly in the 2.5 inch drives, all the way up to 10,000 RPM, although for consumer drives 7200 RPM is the norm. Of course, the faster the platter spins, the faster the data can be read, but the faster speed will result in more heat and greater chance of failure in theory. Modern HDDs connect to a PC through the SATA 3 interface. The biggest HDD manufacturers are Seagate, Western Digital and Toshiba. At this point I'd love to tell you which one is the best, but to be perfectly honest, all of them make very decent, reliable HDDs, though of course some people will have had bad experience with one of them. So let's look at the good and bad points of HDDs. They have super large capacity, which is great for mass storage and as secondary drives. They are relatively inexpensive. A consumer 1TB drive at the moment is around £40 here in the UK. The data is more likely to be recoverable in the event of an accidental deletion due to how they work. Also, they don't have a set operation lifespan, unlike SSDs, which are guaranteed to wear out at some point, although it's a pretty damn long time. Although interestingly enough, they do have a lower MTBF, mean time between failure, than an SSD. They are comparatively slow next to SSDs, as they have to wait for the actuator arm to move and go to the correct place and then read the data, etc. So anything from around 50 megabytes a second to 120 megabytes a second. As they have moving parts, they are pretty noisy in operation, and also, due to the mechanical parts, they are quite delicate. Finally, they are not as versatile as SSDs in where they can be placed, due to being susceptible to vibrations, overheating, etc. So now let's look at solid state drives, or SSDs for short. Unlike mechanical drives, these have no moving parts at all. They work by having blocks of flash memory that are connected to a controller, which incidentally is the most important part of an SSD, that deals with receiving information from the system and then storing it on the memory chips, as well as things such as read-write, caching, etc. All flash memory has a limited number of read-write cycles, which is why the controller will try and make sure that every bit of flash memory is used evenly, so that they all wear out, in theory at least, at the same time. Often the lifespan of the flash memory is overblown as an issue. It's pretty unlikely that any consumer will ever wear out their SSD. Due to the way SSDs work, they do not need to be defragged. Doing so will have zero effect on an SSD's performance and is generally considered to be bad, as it's needlessly using up read-write cycles for no reason. However, doing so will not immediately kill your SSD or anything so drastic as some people seem to claim. Instead of defragging, SSDs use trim. This is actually nothing like defragging, but using it will have a similar effect of speeding up your system, or more, not having it slow down over time. What it does is tell the SSD controller when a file is deleted or no longer needed, so it can delete it in advance so that when it wants to write a file, it doesn't have to spend time deleting what's already there. To see if you have trim enabled for your SSD, open up the command prompt as admin and put in fsutil behavior query disabledeletenotify. If it displays disabledeletenotify equals 0, then trim is enabled. If it equals 1, then it is disabled. If it is disabled, put fsutil behavior set disabledeletenotify 0 into the command prompt to enable it. I'll put these lines into the video description for you so you can copy and paste. One last thing to mention with trim is that with it enabled, things that are deleted are permanently deleted and not recoverable. On a side note, this doesn't apply to thumb drives and external flash drives as they don't use trim. Currently most SSDs use the SATA 3 6GB per second interface, meaning max read-write speeds of around 550 and 520 MB a second respectively for good high-end drives. The new SATA Express interface promises higher read-write speeds due to it being directly linked into the PCIe bus. However, as of the time of this video, there aren't really any drives available yet to give any specific numbers. There's also M.2, which is the replacement for eSATA drives commonly found in laptops and is basically a smaller version of SATA Express. You can get PCIe SSDs, but while these are super fast, they are still eye-wateringly expensive for anyone that's not either a professional of some kind or a pretty damn rich enthusiast. There are many SSD manufacturers nowadays, but actual flash production is mainly done by the top 5, which is Samsung, Toshiba, SanDisk, SK Hynix, or however you say it, and Micron. So the biggest difference tends to be in the controller used. Companies such as AData, for instance, make very good SSDs despite not manufacturing the flash memory themselves. So let's take a look at the good and bad points of SSDs. They are much faster than traditional HDDs, sometimes up to 10 times faster. They are totally silent in operation. They can be mounted to pretty much anything you can stick it to, and the lower power means that not much heat is generated. Also, they can handle drops and shocks as there are no moving parts. However, they are still very expensive compared to an HDD, typically around £80 for a 256GB drive. So really not suitable for large mass storage just yet. Also, they have a limited lifespan due to flash memory wearing out. Again, though, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. And also, as I said before, deleted files are unrecoverable if you use trim. Of course, you may have seen or heard about SSHDs or hybrid drives. These are, as suggested by the name, a cross between a traditional drive and a solid-state drive. Typically, an SSHD will feature a large mechanical drive, maybe 1 TB or 2 TB, along with around 8 GB of flash memory. The SSHD has firmware that is designed to identify commonly accessed files and boot up data, and store that in the flash memory to drastically speed up the important things that you use. Of course, while they are indeed much faster than just an HDD, they are still somewhere off a standalone SSD, plus the fact you get all the drawbacks of a mechanical drive. That said, they are a good option if you cannot afford an SSD and a separate HDD together, or in particular if you want to upgrade a PS4 HDD to something bigger and faster without totally breaking the bank, as they do come in the compact 2.5-inch size or the larger 3.5-inch desktop size. So at the end of the day, my advice is the same as a lot of people. The best compromise between price and performance is to have an SSD for your OS and important programs, and a larger mechanical drive for storing everything else. As far as actual manufacturers or specific SSDs go, there are so many different ones it's sort of unfair for me to name names. But I will anyway. Samsung are the largest manufacturer of flash memory and thus really know what they're doing, so you can't go wrong with a good 850 EVO or 850 Pro. Also, from my own personal experience, the Corsair Neutron GTX series are very good, as they use Toshiba Toggle NAND flash. Also, Plexner are pretty good too. as well as Intel, who are quite expensive but make very reliable drives. Of course, there are many other good SSDs, and as always, I urge you to search for reviews on the SSD you want to buy before purchasing. I have a particular horror story about an old OCZ drive that I bought before I realised it was basically a time bomb, so to speak. One thing I will say is that suspiciously cheap SSDs, such as the Kingston SSD now V300, are that cheap for a reason. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing and commenting. Let me know in the comments below if you have anything you'd like to share, or if you have any suggestions for a future guide to video. I know there's already been mention of a possible mechanical switches video, so I will probably do that at some point, although I'm waiting on a few keyboards to come in, so it won't be that soon. Check out our affiliate links in the video description if for Amazon, if maybe you want to buy a new SSD or HDD, maybe if you want. Also for TorGuard, who offer not only a great VPN service, which I actually use myself, but also a number of other services designed to keep you secure online. As always, no hard feelings if you don't want to use them. Thank you again for watching, subscribe for more weekly videos, and I will catch you later.